let's just say worst case scenarios of situations and always planning for the worst. I just thought that was just who I was. And as soon as I started diving more into ADHD research, along with autism research and other aspects, I realized that it's not just under that one definition, that there's so much more to it. And one of the aspects is RSD. And once you actually understood what the aspect was, that it's not just that I feel bad about a situation or I plan the worst case scenario or I overanalyze what someone said or how they said it. That is what RSD is. And that's just something
Mhm.
that we deal with. Whereas other people, most neurotypicals usually just take something at face value and call it done. Whereas I will take a situation, a word, a phrase, or anything else and overanalyze it to the extent that it keeps me up for the next 4 days.
Welcome back to another episode of Living with FASD. I'm going to welcome Kyle Perkins back to the mic. He's rapidly becoming one of my favorite content producers as far as ADHD is concerned. So I hope no one in my audience minds if I bring him back occasionally, because it's really hard to resist Kyle's content in terms of its importance to applying to those of us who are living with FASD, because I think there's just so much overlap. Anywhere between 50 and 80% of us, I think that I've seen stats varying all over the place as to how many of us with FASD also have ADHD. So today's topic is rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And it's actually kind of amazing how often that has come up on the FASD podcast. I happen to be looking back at episode 1, and we touched on it even back then in 2023. Just so my audience knows, from time to time, I'm going to be hearing alarms going off because my blood sugar's deciding it wants to be low. Let me shut this up. So, Kyle, welcome back. Take it away. While you start talking, I'm going to be shutting up these alarms.
Well, first off, thank you for letting me back in. I certainly appreciate being able to share more information and personal experiences about various aspects of ADHD and the wibbly wobbly spectrum that everyone can be on at certain times.
Great way of putting it, wibbly wobbly. Yeah, I think what got you interested in looking at rejection sensitivity?
Well, to be honest, I didn't know what it was when I initially started experiencing, let's just say, worst case scenarios of situations and always planning for the worst. I just thought that was just who I was. And as soon as I started diving more into ADHD research, along with autism research and other aspects, I realized that it's not just under that one definition, that there's so much more to it. And one of the aspects is RSD. And once you actually understood what the aspect was, that it's not just that I feel bad about a situation or I plan the worst case scenario or I overanalyze what someone said or how they said it. That is what RSD is. And that's just something that we deal with. Whereas other people, most neurotypicals usually just take something at face value and call it done. Whereas I will take a situation, a word, a phrase, or anything else and overanalyze it to the extent that it keeps me up for the next 4 days. And
Oh,
having to learn how to deal with that, but also being more
yeah.
comfortable with it and saying that this is who I am. This is what I have to deal with.
Mhm.
This is not as bad as it could be, but I
Yeah.
know that my brain is still thinking up the 1,000 possible worst case scenarios and wants to plan for them. But
Yeah.
again, it's just part of daily life.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I resonated with so clearly in the post you put up a week ago, which is why I said, Kyle, come back, was that we overanalyze the nuances of situations, of comments that are made to us or responses we get to things. It's like, okay, on the one hand, you could take it at face value, but is it really this instead? And talk to my audience a little bit more about that. Can you describe a typical scenario?
Actually, yes. So about an hour or so ago, I was talking to my business coach, and one of the things that we had during our conversation was, in most cases, a very minor misunderstanding. Something was said, he didn't understand what I said, I didn't understand what he said, and it just spiraled out of control. And because of the way the situation was spiraling, I thought he was angry at me. I thought that I
Mm.
had to get defensive and I had to elaborate on what I was saying and say different phrases and concepts. And by the time the hour was up with my coach, he flat out said, "I'm not angry with you. I'm just trying to understand." And I said, "Okay, based on everything you just said, based on everything that I heard, based on everything that just happened, I thought you were biting my head off." And
I
it turns out it was completely not that. It's just one small misunderstanding and things just kind of spiraled and I made it worse in my head.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I think everyone in my audience is gonna be like, "Oh, do I do that too?" And I'm curious, last time that you were on with me, we kinda talked about also autism and ADHD, and the commonalities there. Do you see rejection, sensitivity, dysphoria, or RSD? Do you see this also playing into the autistic community?
I have no doubt. Honestly, based on my own experience and based on the research that I've seen, along with others that I've had the chance to be a part of, again, the whole spectrum overlaps in ways that we can only imagine. There's no one particular way of saying, I am just ADHD and that's it. But when in fact, you
Mhm.
could have ADHD, bit of OCD, FASD, bit of RSD, bit of enter other acronyms. So, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if that large overlap would continue.
That really just brings home the central point that it might help us in the neurodivergent community to stop thinking in terms of diagnostic labels and just start thinking about neurodiversity in general.
Completely agree.
Yeah. So RSD is certainly one of those things. What have you found that helps you to slow your roll? And maybe decrease the frequency by which RSD can spiral out on us?
I wish it was that easy. Unfortunately, it's not one thing that I have the ability to control until it's almost too late, especially
Right.
being in a retail environment or as the head of that retail environment. I'm usually the one dealing with certain vendors, of course, the franchise customers on a frequent basis, the employees, along with other franchise owners, just trying to get the systems going. I usually don't have the chance to be able to say, "Hey, I've just had too much. I need to step away." So for me, it's just taking one situation at a time. And honestly, the only thing that I've seen that can actually help is not exactly body doubling, but more like body doubling accountability. Basically, I have an accountability partner who is my wife, and
Okay.
she has a lot of the same experiences. And so she knows what it looks like from the outside in. Whereas inside out, you don't know what's happening until it's too late. You're in the spur of the moment,
Right.
things are just happening so fast, you really can't control it. So when she says, "Hey, I notice you're spiraling, just take 5 seconds to breathe," half of me
Mhm.
says, "You don't know what I'm going through, just shut up." The other half of me says, "No, you're right. I need to do this because you're seeing it and I'm experiencing it. So I do need to take a step back."
Yeah.
But sometimes she's not there and the situation just spirals. And next thing you know, 4 hours go by, 6 days go by, a month goes by, and I'm still thinking about how certain words were said or how certain phrases were said or if I misunderstood something. And just, again, everything just spirals out from that point.
But Kyle, that's a wonderful strategy that,
Mhm,
everyone in my audience can adopt if they have not already, is to
mhm.
find an accountability partner, whether it's a spouse or someone else living with FASD that we can bounce things by. I know I tend to turn to my friend Jody for that purpose. It's like, was I right in this or am I processing something goofy? And having living with it also. She totally has that outside in and inside out perspective and can speak to it. But that's a wonderful strategy.
Well, thank you.
So to be able to start using accountability partners maybe on a daily basis.
Mhm.
How's your instead of saying, "Honey, how's your day?" It's like, "Honey, did anything get you going today?" Yeah, I think that's great. So have
And
you talked to anyone else that uses that strategy or something different?
uh, yes and no. Honestly, that strategy to me came from many years of trial and error.
Mhm.
I had an idea, hey, can you start doing this? And most of the time it works, sometimes it doesn't. But when I talk to other people about their experiences and say, hey, what works for you? What doesn't work? What have you tried? I get a barrage of answers. And I
Mhm.
know from their own experiences and from my experience that one solution doesn't fit everybody. So
Yeah.
hopefully they can find something that works for them. Maybe try the solution I have. Maybe I can try theirs. Just finding something that works, that is consistent, and that has better results instead of just do it because I say so.
Right.
So yes and no.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. You had you reposted someone else's content on RSD this week as well. What was the highlight from that? What did you resonate with? There's like, oh, I've got to put this up.
Well, the original post that I had is actually from a webcomic artist known as the ADHD Alien, and she does a very good job of putting a lot of the concepts of ADHD and the various aspects into a visual form so others can understand it. Basically, what I'm doing, just more on like Facebook and Instagram. And her first post that I shared last week specifically talked about RSD in a nutshell. Basically, did you hear how that one person said the word yes? Are they angry at me? Is there something I'm not reading into or overreading into it? And when
Hmm.
she made a post literally a few days later, I said, hey, this is so good. I have to share it and, of course, credit her with it. And she dove into more of the history of RSD with herself, essentially what she felt
Oh.
like as very young how she grew up and the different experiences she had, and basically saying, hey, this is something that everyone deals with. And it's not just
Mhm.
an acceptance of a yes or no answer. There is an acceptable tolerance that certain answers or phrases can go into. And if they fall below that tolerance, then they're angry at me and I don't know why. There's no middle
Okay.
ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just being able to reflect on her experiences now to how she could as a younger person definitely helped me say, hey, this is perfect. This actually dives into it deeper than I
Hmm.
originally understood and the original post had. So I thought it was something that I could share with my audience.
Yeah. I'm curious too if maybe part of the shaping for RSD comes from our history of chronic rejection. Neurotypical kids are ruthless with one another, so this starts very young,
Hmm.
but there's so much rejection of kids who are neurodivergent by the neurotypical community because we're not processing things the way we're expected to. We're not responding the way other people would expect us to. We're just, there's something off and there's something off putting about the way we interact with our community. So we get rejected over and over and over again, but it's because we're not processing things the way most do.
Hmm.
So I'm wondering if because of that chronic rejection that we're hypersensitive and ready to defend on, at the blink of an eye.
I completely agree with you. And honestly, from the youngest memory that I can recall, it literally has to deal with the fact of being rejected from that young age, whether it was our parental situation, our schooling
Mhm.
situation, neighborhood. To give a good example, back in first grade, so for me, that was almost 30 years ago ish, give or take, there were no other neurodivergent students in my classroom, or at least none that I knew of. Because
Mhm.
the whole concept back in the 90s was very generic when it came to ADD versus ADHD versus all the other definitions that we have nowadays.
Oh.
And my teacher asked the whole class a question. She said, do you mind if I do this? I don't recall what it was, doesn't matter. Every single student answered no. But to me, I was always told if someone asks you a question and you're okay with it, you should answer yes. So I answered yes. She immediately stood up and said, who said yes? Who has a problem with it? And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to shut up now. And I didn't
Yeah.
say anything because I felt called out because every other student
Mhm.
said no. I said yes. And the teacher took offense to that. And I just felt alone and small and
Yeah.
literally
Wanted to
like,
hide.
yeah, like my
Yeah.
one word answer was enough to send her over. And it's like, I didn't mean to
Mhm.
cause any harm. It's just I was told to answer yes. And so I did. And now I'm in trouble for it. So what am I
Yeah.
supposed to do?
Yeah. So it certainly would have been helpful if the training had been, if you're asked, answer honestly instead of if you're asked, say yes. But that's kind of like the black and white concrete rule following that a
Hmm.
lot of us do, right? So, yeah. And that's reinforcement of the need to wear the mask of
Hmm.
normalcy. Yeah, they do dovetail into one another, don't they?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What has there been any self-talk that you've learned over the years that can be helpful to like self-validating that you try and remind yourself of when you're processing this rejection? Once RSD is triggered, is there any self-talk that you find helpful?
Yes and no. Unfortunately, if the situation just starts to spiral too far, then the only thing I can do is just tell myself it's not as bad as I think. It's not as bad as it's
Mhm.
going to be. I'm overthinking everything. But again, you're always thinking, you know, that whatever I'm thinking is not correct because it's always going to be worse than I expect. And just the event that I'm usually planning for or prepping for that I always think is going to have the worst case scenario usually never is the worst case scenario. And to my
Mhm.
surprise, even though this happened multiple times, I just can't get it out of my head that, the worst case scenario is going to happen. To give a good example, yesterday, actually, I had one of my employees literally after a very long day said, "Hey, can I speak to you privately?" And I mean, as the manager and as to an employee, I hate the phrase, "We need to talk anyway." I hate any variation of that. And so
Yeah.
to me, I was thinking, okay, well, so he's going to take me aside and he's going to tell me how bad his job is and he's going to tell me that he wants to quit tomorrow and stuff. And so I'm prepping myself for the worst case scenario.
Mhm.
And 30 minutes later, we go outside, we have a little honest talk, and he just tells me, "Hey, I've noticed a few things and I wanted to bring to your attention, and I feel like we can work to make it better." And after we had a little talk, I'm like, this did not go anywhere near what I planned. But I just can't break that habit of always
Yeah.
expecting the worst case scenario because again, that's just how I'm wired.
Yeah.
So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, and I frequently say, plan for the worst and celebrate anything else when things don't go badly. But so many situations in my own life where I expect it to be something awful, but if I'm emotionally prepared for awful and that doesn't happen, then
Hmm.
that is a huge load off our shoulders, right? I
I
remember
agree.
one time I had taken a job in upstate Pennsylvania. It was a drug and alcohol slash mental health program that was over several rural counties. And it was a brand new thing. It was hours away from, my husband and I, my first husband and I had just moved from Virginia back to Pennsylvania. We were staying with my mom and the closest job I could get was hours away. But I took it. So I was living in a hotel in one city. And then I had two offices that I split my time in, and neither one was in that city. They were both in podunk little towns that had like nothing. And it was just a really bad scenario. And the whole agency went to a conference in the Poconos. And they didn't tell us what they wanted us to take, which classes they wanted us to sign up for. Being a big city girl, I thought, oh, well, this looks interesting. And it was, this was back in my mental health days. When I took the job, I developed my own intake and it was thorough. It was very thorough because they didn't say these are the forms we need you to use. So I just developed what I thought was best practice, looking into all aspects of life that includes sexuality. And after the conference, I got sick. I got pneumonia
Hmm.
because there was a lot of rainfall in the Poconos that year. And happened to oh, I know what I did. I bumped the sliding desk tray with and it knocked over the microphone. So I took this class on addictions and sexuality, and I thought, it looks really interesting. But then I was home for several weeks because the pneumonia, and when I came back, I just had this sinking, ominous feeling, like there's there's something gonna happen. And so I trotted out that framework, prepare for the worst and party for anything else. And I just say, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? They can
Hmm.
fire me. And that's actually what happened. They said, you're not a good fit for us. The clients at this one office, they don't want anyone asking them about their private life. And I'm like, good golly, I didn't ask for details. I don't want any pictures in my head. But,
Hmm.
the reason you ask about it is if you can talk about that, you can talk about anything.
Hmm.
Shows a potential for getting families to talk and work together and process sensitive stuff. stuff, right? Yeah, prepare for the worst. And you can live through it and you can learn from it, which I did, know your audience,
Mhm.
know the peeps you're going to be working with. And yeah, that was my first introduction to there's a huge difference between city folk and country folk. Yeah, not good.
Agreed.
Not good. But, you know, that's okay because
Mhm.
I couldn't have kept going with that job. Not it was too impractical. So, but it the way we can set ourselves up and we can also help to get off that loop,
Mhm.
but oh goodness. Anything else about rejection sensitivity that you have found helpful? Like, how big of an impediment is that? I mean, with ADHD, there are so many things that trip us up and
Mhm.
give us difficulty. Like in the scheme of things, how often does RSD raise its ugly head for you?
I would say at least once a day, if not more.
Okay.
I mean,
I'm wondering if my audience can, put in the comments, on whatever platform that you're watching this on, how often does rejection sensitivity play a part for you in adding challenges and wrinkles to your day-to-day life? Yeah. I think you were about to say something else though, Kyle. I'm sorry I cut you off.
that's okay. I was just going to say that obviously in my current work environment, that I can't think of a day that goes by that either something was said that I'm overanalyzing, or I'm always considering the worst case scenario for X, Y, and Z, or just
Mhm.
something lightly goes wrong and I'm always prepping for the worst. So it's
Mhm.
just part of daily life right now.
Yeah. Does that consume like prepping for things that are coming up? Do you find that you waste a lot of time prepping for
Yes and
things that may never happen?
yes and no. Uh, time
Or is
wise,
that just background stuff?
so for me, the biggest thing that I find that I waste is usually just mental energy. Obviously, there's not a lot I can do physically to start prepping for certain situations or certain scenarios, or if X, Y, or Z happens, but just the thoughts spinning in my mind of every
Mhm.
worst case scenario that I want to plan for so I can be properly prepped is just spinning away and wasting mental energy. And by the time the event happens, or by the time that the situation comes up, I'm usually just too exhausted to think of anything else.
Mhm.
So really for me, it's more of just a waste of mental energy and just being exhausted. And by the time that the day ends, once the situation is over, I'm usually either crashing, whether it's just, a nap in the evening or sleeping for way
Mhm.
too long, or if the
Mhm.
situation hasn't occurred yet, then of course I'm still going through scenarios trying to plan for a worst case, and that can keep me up for days.
Okay. So you're really running yourself into the ground with energy some days.
Yes, for more
Yeah.
reasons than one, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, as if being an entrepreneur, it doesn't do that on its own, right?
Oh, obviously not.
You had a post the other day about the ADHD survival kit. I'll bet everyone watching would relate to that as well. What kinds of things are in your survival kit?
Yes. So for one thing I have learned is this is going to sound um, kind of silly, is to accept the shutdown, which is
Mm,
literally slide number two. But one thing that I've learned is when I'm running myself ragged and I'm going in loops and everything is just way too much, pushing through it is actually worse.
yeah.
And I just need to accept the shutdown. I need to stop fighting it. I need to say, okay, things are just getting way too far out of hand. I just need to take a step back, whether it's watching a comfort TV show or
Yeah.
working on my creative writing or trying to just, take a nap and have my brain reset. For
Yeah.
me, that had to be one of the biggest things that I had to actually accept.
Mhm.
Beyond that, I also understand that I need a minimal list, not my gigantic to-do list that overwhelms me with everything that needs to happen. Just, what are the basics for today? What do I need to survive? And that
Mhm.
by itself will get me through the day. It won't get a lot of things done, but if I say, hey, drink water or go to the grocery
Yeah.
store or you know, feed the cats, just something like that
Yeah.
that I can keep on repeat and know I can survive with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you can change one thing, then by all means do it, whether it's getting your clothes ready or having something that's already, scheduled to go out and making your day easier, then by all means do it. It makes your job easier. Or if all else
Hmm.
fails, change your environment, go out for a walk, pet the
Yeah.
dog, or do anything else that changes what's going on because you need a,
Yeah.
a a reset.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things that can do those resets, right? Like,
Hmm.
I mean, going out for a walk ticks off a couple boxes, right? It gives
Hmm.
us that connection with sunlight, which is so very important, for our mitochondria, for our circadian rhythms, I mean, just it's medicine. Sunlight is medicine for us. But
Yes.
also that physical activity physically burns off some of the stress that we face.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I also do want to put a little caveat there because one of the things that my business coach suggests, not saying he's wrong, but he's not, is if you need a change of scenery, then by all means, go for a walk. You get all the sunlight, you get a chance to breathe. And
Hmm.
while I agreed with the idea, one of the things that kind of ties us back to RSD is I can leave my current environment. I can go out and think about different ideas and concepts and just a different perspective. But I
Hmm.
also know that once I go back to where I began, the problem still exists and I have to deal with it. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is going through with me every single step of the way, trying to figure out
Right.
what can I do to solve the problem, which means that it was just counterintuitive.
Oh gosh, we have so many arguments within our heads, don't we?
Agreed.
Who needs someone else to argue with? We do a great job arguing with ourselves.
It doesn't make sense to most people, but neurodivergents definitely understand that.
Yeah, we get it. We
Mhm.
get it because we're so there. What other things are in your toolkit?
Well, for one, a lot of people like to use a body double, whether that is physical or using sometimes apps or websites. My wife is usually with me most of the time, so she just body doubles with me, and we just exist in the same room and just do our own things, and that's perfectly fine. I find that people on webcams usually are not trying to judge me, but if I watch them and they watch me, then we're kind of doing the same thing. We're not getting our stuff done. We're just watching each other. So for me, that doesn't work, but that's just
Yeah,
me.
yeah,
Whereas my wife can be in the same room and we can be on our computers or phones or tablets or watching TV and just be in our own little world. And that's just one thing that both of us have accepted to work with, which
mhm,
again, that's just me.
mhm,
And last but not least, at least in the guide, just double checking, yeah, is eating. Sometimes I am extremely bad about this. I forget to eat some days. I forget to go
mm,
to the bathroom some days because I'm just so either hyper focused on what I'm doing or I
mhm.
get so worried that I have to overthink everything. And by the time I realize it, it's, 7 p.m. and I haven't eaten a thing all day. So
Yeah,
sometimes, blood sugar crashes make ADHD worse or RSD or anything else. So if you just
mhm,
need to get a can of soup or go out to the burger place and get a burger or, get a pizza and make it last for 3 days, by all means do it because
yeah.
nutrition can wait, but fuel can't.
Right, right. And sugar is the source of fuel for our brains, but fats very quick they get broken down and sugar extracted, right? So that's why a lot of kids who are neurodivergent and really struggling working so hard during the day and those of us as adults at work, we burn through so much energy just getting through the day when we get home. One thing they found in my FASD training was that some kids will come home and go straight to the sugar bowl, or they'll grab a stick of butter and most of us are like, but it's the same kind of thing as a pregnant woman instinctively being guided to eat certain things because it's what the baby needs. We will grab things because it's what our brain needs.
Agreed.
And yeah, so and I think my sugar's finally come up. It has. Up back to the safe range. Because I was hyper focused this morning trying to get so much done. And all of a sudden it was like 45 minutes before I start recording with Kyle. I still have to go to the bakery to get the challah bread for the Friday evening service. It's like, oh, can I do it? Can I do it? And it's like, yeah, sugar's going low. It's a perfect excuse to eat a cookie, but it's not the
Agreed.
best lunch. Not the best lunch. Protein would have been good.
If
Um,
possible, yes.
yeah. Yeah, we need a good mix of both, right?
Mhm.
So and fruits and veggies and the whole 9 yards. So, yeah, if anyone wants nutritional information, seek a nutritionist or go listen to a podcast episode with Jared Brown because he tells us what a lot of us need to keep our minds working healthy.
Hmm. And not just eating the same cookie every single day.
No, every day. But yeah, those are some really good strategies in your toolkit. Yeah. I like the change of scenery one a lot. That appeals to me. But I think I agree with you that the number one thing is know your limits. Know when you don't have to get everything done to be satisfied with your day and to put things away and come back later.
And also celebrate the small victories. There's so much that happens during
Hmm.
the day that if you're just
Yeah.
considering the day productive because you got this one major task done, then yes,
Yeah.
that works. But if it doesn't, but you got 10 other small tasks done, then by all means, celebrate the small victories that may be overlooked.
Yeah. 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 Like I got to the bakery before they closed. Oh my goodness. All right.
Like,
So yeah. And that's it. That's important because a lot of times we are so hyper focused on a task
mhm,
and not over scheduling ourselves for things or, not biting off more than we can realistically chew.
mhm,
That's a phrase that a lot of people stand by. But I think for those of us who are neurodiverse, it's even more important. Yeah,
agreed.
because what's realistic for us is not the same as what's realistic for neurotypical, but even there, neurodiversity, none of us are the same, no matter where we are in that neurodiverse versus divergent versus typical, right? If
Mhm.
you look at it as one spectrum, we're all on different places.
That's why I
So
said that the wibbly wobbly spectrum.
yeah, yeah. I interviewed a guest a couple times, and I don't know if there goes my microphone again. I don't know if it was in part one, which has aired, or part two, which has not aired yet. But she was talking about the bell curve. If everyone can think of back to math class, there's a bell curve, and the highest part is where most of us are. But she said that the exact center point where the most people are is 1%.
Mhm.
So 1% is neurotypical. 99% of us are neurodiverse. It's a very interesting way of putting it. We're other than 1% of, of the human race, we're all off that, right? It was an
I
interesting
can
concept.
can agree. I just wish
Yeah.
society shared it more.
Yeah, yeah. I really like that emphasis on neurodiversity as opposed to neurodivergence. And there's so much thought on that, and words mean so many different things to so many people. But the idea that everyone has their own unique combination of strengths and challenges and interests and learning style preferences, that no two people are the same, and really celebrating neurodiversity.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Also one reason
Um,
why one spectrum is not enough to identify or
yeah.
properly understand one person.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's something that I teach a lot of with the FASD community. Most people, they think of spectrums as just a linear model, right?
Mhm.
With low functioning on one end and high functioning on the other. But really it's a three-dimensional model.
I would
Not necessarily round, but if you think about, those beads that little kids will play with, like a necklace made out of beads, and
mm,
they're not round. They have all these different facets on them, right? And each facet is a different area of our functioning in life. One might be working memory, another might be, ability to read social cues, facial cues or other nonverbal cues, or, just all these different aspects of the way we function in life. And none of us will be able to put a flag up on the same facets, those same dynamics, or the ways that we function in life. It's going to be different for every single one of us.
I agree. The only challenge I would make with a 3D model is sometimes it could be a 4D model because it's based on time and experience and
Yes.
yesterday versus today.
Yes. Yeah, I have said that too, but it's really hard to show on paper a 4D
True.
because how do you show time, right? So, but yeah, in fact, I said that in my book too, that it's this 3D model is actually 4D because of time, because the way that we function changes over time.
Hmm.
We don't have the same struggles now that we did as kids.
Agreed.
And yeah, yeah. And as our roles change in life, so do the ways that we interact with the world.
Hmm.
So Yeah, that's amazing. And anything else you want to talk about today? Like, again, your content is just so amazing, Kyle. Were there any favorite things that you posted about over the last couple weeks that we
Oh,
can think
good
about?
question. Well, based on everything that has been posted, like I said, the ADHD alien is one person I really love to follow. One of the oh, one of the ones that I actually posted in between the post you mentioned and the other ADHD alien post was talking about instant term memory. And I was honestly surprised how many people saw this post of a webcomic artist who's doing something and literally in the middle of it, she pauses and she says, "What was I just doing? How could I forget
Yes.
what I was doing while I was doing it?"
Yes, that is a thing.
And to me, it's just, I always thought it was just a little quirk of, how can I forget what I'm doing as I'm literally doing it? I walk into a
Yeah.
room and I forget why I was there. I'm driving down the road, I forgot where I was going, or
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of hyper focusing on task, and then I just completely forget what the goal was, where I'm heading with this,
Yeah.
why was I doing it in the first place? And just seeing so many people have the same experience, the same
Yeah.
comment made me
Like I
feel
just
more
did.
it made me feel more validated in the fact that
Yeah.
this isn't just an interesting quirk. It actually happens to more people than you realize.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
being able to share that and get all the comments and the reactions and stuff, to me,
Yeah.
it helps out a lot. So it's surprising how much can be posted, along with the fact of the pros and cons of ADHD. Like the previous post talks about the dark side of ADHD,
Yeah.
such as insomnia or depression or anything such as identity confusion, RSD, relationship sabotage, not understanding. And I mean, some people think that ADHD is just, hey, squirrel and bouncing off walls, where the other side is a lot more detrimental, a lot more serious about it. And so for me,
Yeah.
being able to share that information has certainly helped. One, give my own perspective, but two, help share the resources to others. And that's, again, part of the reason why I
Yeah.
do it is to share the information.
Yeah. So you just said relationship sabotage. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Sure. One thing that I really appreciate about my relationship, and this is part of the reason why I've been with my wife since 1998, is we are a lot alike. And I do
Mm,
mean like we have a lot of the same interests. We have a lot of the same quirks and traits. She's a bit more ADHD than I am, which is okay, but we learn to accept each other. And if there's
mhm,
a miscommunication or something we don't understand, we don't yell at each other. We don't shout. We don't get angry. We're like, "Hey, I heard you say this. I understand it as this, and I don't think we're on the same page." And by doing
mhm.
that, both of us can say, "Okay, we understand where each other's coming from, and we can meet in the middle as a compromise, and we're happy
Yeah.
for it." Um,
Yeah.
Always maybe, 1% here or there, but the other 99 point whatever percent, we
Yeah.
usually are able to work with each other to find a solution. But one thing that I've seen, especially in a lot of other posts, is someone who has a partner who is ADHD, but they are not. They're being treated as the one who gets angry or who is seen as, you know, not
Yeah.
straightforward enough, or
Yeah.
any of the quirks that happen, it is just, this person being weird. And
Mhm.
you don't realize as the ADHD person that the other person is receiving it this way. And by
Mhm.
doing that without getting to a more middle ground aspect, you can easily sabotage a relationship and not even know it. Because
Yeah.
again, of the hidden social cues or the societal rules that they read between the lines and we don't, or anything else. And it's just something that isn't intentional but
Mhm.
happens, and then it's too late. So just being able to understand that aspect is something that I'm hoping that others can be more open about,
Yeah.
and not this person is being mean when in
Yeah.
fact they're not. They're being blunt because they want to get to the point, or they want to make sure that, there is a middle ground, or they're not reading social cues or reading between the lines or
Mhm.
understanding the
Mhm.
hidden
Mhm.
rules. And just so much about it needs to be said to be understood.
Yeah. A dear friend of mine wrote a book for as a toolkit, basically a resource kit for parents and educators. It's called "Parenting Your Porcupine," and she got the image from um, first people's child she was working with, who he and his friends called themselves the Mighty Mice or something like that.
Mm.
But when they get triggered, right, when their FASD gets triggered all their neurodiverse stuff, the hair stands up on end. And that drawing looks like a porcupine. And so that's become her model ever since. But it's so easy for people to be poking each other all at the same time. We tend to be more comfortable with other neurodiverse people than
Mhm.
with neurotypical people because, when it works, we feel validated and seen and heard and understood like we don't with the neurotypical crowd. But at the same time, it means we can also be getting each other's quills up.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
I was
that's
gonna
a
say,
that's a really good strategy that you and your wife have.
well, thank you. I
Yeah. I
promise it
think
was not intentional.
Well, you stumbled into something that works, right?
Mhm.
And I think a lot of times, I don't, maybe I'm off on this, but because so much of our processing is internal and we don't necessarily verbalize it and put it out there, oftentimes we can have our quills up and we don't recognize that the other person's quills are up.
Mhm.
And I think that's where a lot of the relationship sabotage comes from.
Agreed, and also bringing
Yeah.
this full circle with the RSD, if the
Hmm.
person said something and we're over processing it, then we're of course spiraling in our own way and always considering
Yeah.
worst case scenario, in which case it was just, a simple word or simple phrase and it's nowhere
Yeah.
near as bad as you think it is. Or it could be if
Yeah.
you're continuously thinking of worst case scenarios.
Yeah. And I think too, a lot of people, not everyone, but of course, by any means, but I think a lot of people bring in an element of exaggerating
Hmm.
into this mix. He or she always does this, or they never do that, right? Um, when that enters our inner dialogue as we're trying to process something, things can get messy.
Oh yes.
Yeah. You had also mentioned in terms of the dark side
Hmm.
of ADHD, insomnia. Are there multiple causes for that? Or is it just, the inner dialogue looping that we've been talking about? Are there other things about having ADHD or the autism that will get that going?
Short answer is yes. Long answer is I don't know what the exact causes are, but
Okay.
an ADHD person, you try to lay down and you try to go to sleep because it's 2 a.m. and you realize you have to be up at 6 a.m. or whatever. Saying that from experience, and by the time
And
you
I'm
lay your
nodding my head from experience.
and by the time you lay down, you're like, okay, I need to get to sleep. I need to prep for tomorrow. That's when all the thoughts happen. Hey, did I take
Yeah.
care of this? Did I send this email? Where's my birth certificate? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Questions you would never think of, but just pop in your head, and you have to know the answers. And by the time that happens, and you realize that you either had your second wind at 2 a.m. or you realize that you're wasting time with sleep, whereas you could get other things done.
Yeah.
It's kind of a double-edged sword in that
Yeah.
aspect, but also you're always thinking about what could have gone better, what could have gone wrong, what do I need to prep for? And sometimes it's
Mhm.
just you lay there and you have no idea why you can't go to sleep. You just
Yeah.
stare at the ceiling. And I can't tell you how many times I've done that.
I You just triggered some memories for me. I'm thinking of all the times where, at my last 2 places of employment, one I worked for 22 years and the other for 2 years before we moved up here to North Dakota. All the times where my supervisor seemed to know that I had had trouble sleeping. Yeah, emails are time-stamped.
Hmm.
So I betray myself when I give up on trying to sleep and just go get something done. Yeah.
I
On the
understand that all too
positive
well.
side, yeah, you can get a lot of good writing done in the middle of the night when there's no phone ringing and it's quiet and there's nobody to bust into your office or call you or text you because everyone else is doing the normal thing of sleeping.
And then you realize the school bus is going by and the sun's coming up.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you realize I'm exhausted and the
Hmm.
day's just starting. Yeah. So I'm circling back again to your list of the dark side. I'm wondering what else was on that list.
Uh,
So
I
is
mean,
insomnia
so
and
it had the chronic fatigue and insomnia. Basically, your body
yeah,
begs for rest. Your mind won't stop racing, like I just said. You stay awake
yeah,
exhausted, wired and trapped in a storm of thoughts. You wake up drained as if you never slept at all. Basically,
yeah,
half-hour nap is giving you the same result as 10 hours of sleep. You don't understand why you don't
Yeah.
feel rested at the
Yeah.
end of a long night, even though you had, 6, 8, 10 hours, and it's just that's how things happen.
Yeah.
But you also had paralysis that feels like depression. This is one thing that most people don't understand until it happens to them. That there are
Okay.
just some days, whether it's pre-shutdown or even during a shutdown, that you just sit there and you know things have to get done. Your body screams, "Hey, you have a list of 1,000 things. Just start one of them." But your mind
Mhm.
is saying, "Yeah, that's not going to happen," and you're just sitting there staring at a computer or staring at a phone or staring at a wall or
Yeah.
staring at a cat, and you're like, "I can't get myself to do things." And it's so hard to explain until a person experiences it and realizes you're fighting yourself and you're losing both
Mhm.
sides.
And you're losing both sides. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, then we have identity confusion. Basically, you don't know who you are when no one is watching. Of course, you always mask out and you always go out and, put on a smile and you be your best
Mhm.
self in social situations. But by the time you get home, you don't actually know who you are. And this comes
Yeah.
into identity confusion where you over explain yourself, you overact until you basically forget what is real, which is
Mhm.
one thing that I like to do with my creative writing and kind of just channel that into it so that I have a reminder of what I did and also with the LinkedIn post and making sure that, hey, this is what I experienced, this is what I want to share, and this is a history of what I've done so I can reflect on it myself.
Yeah. Did
Uh,
a lot of people chime in on that point when you
um,
posted about the dark?
quite a few, yes. I
Mhm.
don't have the exact count in front of me, but quite a
Oh,
few,
no.
yes.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
on the list, we of course have RSD. You pretend you don't care, but a single ignored message can ruin your day. You obsess that tiny comment until it becomes a deep wound. And if it were only easy to get over it, just the whole
Mhm.
RSD aspect. We talked about the relationship sabotage, and then the one that I've kind of self-explored is understanding is not enough. Understanding your
Mm.
ADHD doesn't magically fix it. Without a guide of
Right.
practical strategies to manage your executive functions, you will remain trapped in the same frustrating cycles, which is one
Yeah.
thing that I've done for the past 20 plus years until I started diving into it, finding some of these Facebook groups or finding these local communities and basically saying, hey, I'm not alone. I know a lot of people share the same mentality, same thought process,
Mhm.
and not
Mhm.
everyone has the same experiences, but also not everyone has the same solutions. And
Right.
so, even though I understand it better, it's not the magical solution to fix it. But I also
Yeah.
don't want to fix it. I just want to understand myself better. And by understanding
Yeah.
myself, and understanding what others have gone through and how they deal with things helps
Yeah.
me understand what they're going through and not just I'm alone in this by myself.
Right. Right. And I think too, part of that is the self-understanding enables us to tailor accommodations for the way we work, for the
Hmm.
way we function in different situations, because one size fits all modalities, they don't work for us. Yeah. I think that's really valuable. And I think most people in my audience are going to be like, yeah, I do that too. Oh, I never thought about, this is one of my quirks, but I never thought about it in this way. So
Hmm.
I think the voice that you're bringing today has been very, very valuable.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate it. Okay. So we've been chatting for a while. So I think we can just pick this up another time after I find some other fascinating posts. It's like, Kyle, come back.
I have
But
plenty more to go through.
yeah, thank you so much for everything that you do for the community, for the LinkedIn community, and wherever else you put your posts that are just so wonderful. I really appreciate your getting a lot of people to think about things and also for being that voice that people can resonate with so
Absolutely.
they realize that they're not alone either.
All part
Yeah.
of the process.
Yeah. All right. I appreciate you and I look forward to our next candid conversation whenever that's going to be.
I appreciate
So,
it. Look forward to it. Thank you.
all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Living with FASD. Hopefully, this episode added to the breadth and depth of your knowledge about fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. And I hope that it also made you laugh along the way. please email me at livingwithfasdpodcast@gmail.com. If there are any comments you want to make, questions that you want to ask, topics you want me to cover, or people that you think would make a great guest for the show, please remember to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. By helping my podcast grow, you will be doing your part to help raise awareness and understanding about FASD, which is something we surely can agree needs to happen. I also wanted to remind you to look in the show notes if you would like to order a copy of my book, Sip by Sip, Candid Conversations with Adults Living with FASD. You can find the ordering link in the show notes, and it is now also available in large print. If you find, like me, find that words tend to swim on the page if the font is too small. Also in the show notes, you will find a Calendly link, which is my e-calendar. If you want to reach out to me and talk about any coaching needs that you might have for you or someone in your family, or if you want to talk about training, if you want me to bring me into your community organization or the company that you work for, I'm happy to do trainings about FASD as well. So those things are available to you. And this time, as always, if there are links or books or whatever else that my guest has brought to the show, you'll find those links in the show notes as well. Anyway, that's a wrap for today. I hope that you have a good week, and we will see you next time on Living with FASD.